AI, artificial intelligence. It's transforming the world. So how will secondary education respond? Should it be embraced or feared? BC High's Shield Center for Innovation invites students and educators to explore the potential of AI to deepen student learning and prepare students for their future. Welcome to the AI in Secondary Schools Summit.
Please welcome to the stage Grace Cotter Regan, President of BC High.
Good morning. Good morning. I'd ask everyone to settle. Thank you. A special welcome to our guests visiting us from schools across Massachusetts. It's wonderful to have you here for this special event. My name is Grace Cotter Regan, and I serve as the president of Boston College High School. I also have the good fortune to work closely with Jack Shields, our remarkable alumnus and generous benefactor behind the Shields Center for Innovation. In September of 2020, we launched the Center for Innovation here at BC High. We believe that innovation is a skill that needs to be taught and nurtured alongside others. Students must learn the values of creative thinking, the value of constant iteration, and yes, the value of learning from failure. All of these are the cornerstone of driving innovation. We launched the Shields Center for Innovation at an extraordinary time, in the height of the pandemic, and we were challenged to be innovative in our approach to bringing our community together for discussions on innovation in healthcare, public transportation, climate change, homelessness, and much more. And now we are pleased to host our first ever face-to-face summit for the Shields Center for Innovation. Our topic today is one that is of great interest of all of us in education: artificial intelligence. Less than a year ago, I saw ChatGPT for the first time. That was my first exposure to the extraordinary power of generative AI. I know as educators we have grappled with both its promise and its perils. As with many innovations, it has potential for both. Today, we are here to explore the great promise of AI to enhance education. We're joined by a distinguished panel of experts from industry and education. And we're delighted to be joined once again by Governor Jane Swift, who has dedicated so much of her career since leaving the State House to driving innovation in education as our moderator. Here to introduce Governor Swift and kick off our program, I'm proud to introduce one of our own BC High students, Joshua Solomita, class of 2026, who serves as a member of Day House. All love, all day. Josh has been working with advisors Mrs. Allison McDonald and Ms. Maya Bielak on how to thoughtfully use AI at BC High in Jesuit education. Josh is also a Shields Innovation Ambassador, winning an award at the LearnLaunch K-12 Innovation Summit. Please welcome to the stage your classmate, Joshua.
Thank you, President Reagan. I'm honored to kick off today's event and pleased to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, former Massachusetts Governor Jane Swift. Governor Swift has been at the forefront of driving innovation in education since she was first elected to the Massachusetts State Senate in 1993 at the age of 25. Later, in her time as Lieutenant Governor and Governor, she implemented reforms into our state's education system that have served as a national model for innovation in education. Today, as a leader and advisor to numerous organizations, she continues her legacy of service. She is the president of Education at Work, a national work-based learning nonprofit that helps students graduate with less debt, more skills, connections, and confidence. We are delighted to have her with us today, and I am honored to introduce our moderator for today's session, Governor Jane Swift.
Thank you. It's awesome to be introduced by a future governor. I am thrilled to be here, and I realized as I was sitting here that there isn't a single student here who was alive when I was governor. So unless there's somebody who has been here for a long time. I hate boring panels. I have moderated panels not in Catholic institutions. I am a practicing Catholic, so I'm going to have to try to behave myself and still spice this up for you. I think AI is such a fascinating topic, and we have terrific guests. So the goal for today is to keep you all engaged and interested. I will be interesting. And one way to do that is not to ask everybody the same question, and hopefully to engage the audience at different points. So I will ask each panelist to introduce themselves, which also means I didn't have to memorize their bios. I just had to learn how to pronounce their name, and answer when they answer their first question. So Sundar, very basic question, but a very difficult one to answer. After you introduce yourself and what you do, what is artificial intelligence, and are we going to be taken over by robots someday?
Yeah, really good questions to kick us off with. My name is Soundar Srinivasan. I'm the director of Applied AI Research Team at Microsoft here in Kendall Square, so not too far from where we are today. And the history of AI actually also didn't begin too far from where we are. Marvin Minsky and a bunch of other scientists in the region came up with this notion of artificial intelligence that evolved from thinking machines before that started basically with World War II. So with all the technology that was coming out of the war, there was a lot of capabilities, and people were beginning to wonder how machines or the devices with these capabilities could start to mimic human-like abilities. So the initial definition of artificial intelligence was how to create systems or software agents that have human-like abilities that we think of as intelligence. That involves perception, which might be how we see, how we hear, how we taste, how we listen, and how do we use our memories. So memory was another component. And the third was critical thinking, which is, of course, I'm fairly sure the most interesting part of what we all learn in a school-like environment. So that was what was artificial intelligence. How do you create systems that we as humans take for granted? But even today, even with all these advances, it's challenging for so many of these systems to do. And that's how the field was born, and not too far from here.
So I bet every teacher and educator in here is thinking, critical thinking is hard enough to teach to students. So can you just give us a little bit of the history of how you can teach a machine and a computer to get to the point where it can teach itself something, which is how I understand AI, that many of the educators here, are they going to be robots or replaced by robots? That's what I would be thinking if I was a teacher.
So I have a 2-year-old daughter now, so I get to watch how she learns. And the way a lot of computers learn is not too dissimilar. So we teach our children, we show some examples, and we teach them repeatedly, this is what this means. Like currently I'm teaching her colors. Like this is red, this is yellow, this is not red. Right? And so when you have these artificial systems, what they learn from is currently, for example, all the text that is available in Wikipedia or on the internet, in textbooks, where you already know what those mean, and the teaching goes almost hand in hand with it. So that you're not trying to teach it in the way of rules or in the way of structures, but you're giving it life experiences. The life for a computer is, of course, the knowledge that it can automatically ingest, whether it's videos, whether it's internet text or textbook text, and it learns by differentiating what is in a particular context and what is not. So here it would learn that, okay, if there's something that is sticking here, that's most likely like a tie, without having you to tell that, okay, these are high school students, they will wear ties. And if it sees another student in a different context with a tie, then it knows that, okay, this is a tie, this happens in this context. If I see something, another one like this, then it's most likely to be a tie.
Awesome. So you didn't answer my hardest question. Are teachers going to be replaced by robots?
I think everybody is going to get better through AI by having these AI act as like a personal assistant. That's what my personal belief is. Teachers are going to be better teachers. Students are going to be better students. I'm going to be a better panelist hopefully one day. But that's the real opportunity with AI.
And that answer shows he's a better politician than I am. All right. Next, I'm going to go to Drew. And one of my favorite things to do on panels is to change up the question just a tiny bit from what I told them ahead of time I was going to do. And then I find out who the blushers are. But as you can tell, if you can see Drew, he obviously has a relationship to this institution. So not only does he get the hard Catholic question, but I'm going to ask you when you introduce yourself after I give you the question. I find students love, as they're sort of thinking about where their life path might take them, to understand where people who maybe started in a seat similar to theirs, how you got into the role that you're in. So maybe if you could add that to your bio, that would be really helpful. But here's the hard question. How do innovative technologies fit into learning for depth in our, and I can say that because I already said I'm a practicing Catholic, into our Jesuit Catholic context? Hard question.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Jane. Again, I'm Drew Calcagno. So nice to be back here. I was class of 11, sitting in those have to be the same folding chairs. So I contributed to 2 of these banners, which I'm happy to say, and then I wore my sweater today, so I thought that might connect. I don't know, you can decide. Flattering, thank you. I really want to just get into this question. I'll give you a brief background. Again, I was here in the late 2000s, early 20-teens. I went to the Naval Academy thereafter for undergrad, University of London, and then University of Oxford for grad school. I was in the military for a bit, deployed in the Black Sea, and then worked at the Pentagon and then the White House before joining Google. Now I work on our AI research team, trying to apply all of these crazy models into actual products. Today I'm speaking on behalf of myself rather than any corporate interest, but I'm really excited to kind of delve into a lot of these things. As far as learning for depth and the Jesuit ideals, there's so much to talk about, I think, in these topics and models about what it means to actually learn. If we cut away a lot of the, using different tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Google Bard or Claude from Anthropic or any other lab, really being able to conduct personal research, personal curiosities with these tools, I think allows for a depth that previously would just take so long. It's incumbent on us, though, to actually do so meaningfully and think about the ideals with which you conduct all of your other critical thinking. So the Jesuit ideals of thinking about Cura Personalis and other missions, I think that there's something that we can't forget regardless of religion or lack thereof. Focusing on ways to think about a full problem, use these tools to do research, and then adapt one's own thought journey and learning journey to become even better. Sundar was describing how we can become better teachers, we can become better students, and everything in between. I fully agree with that. And so it doesn't really matter what the tool is. I was talking to Josh about calculators and Wikipedia and the kind of progress that we've had in different means of catalyzing the way we analyze information, think about it, absorb it. I don't see this as terribly different. It is very performant and very interesting. I think it's captured a lot of our attention, but depth, I believe, is only more possible for each individual and faster as a result.
So another thing I love to do on panels like this is to give everybody here one actionable thing as they're leaving. So what are some or one or two ethical issues that students should consider when they use these AI platforms or technologies?
So I think of it in two ways. One is where the rubber meets the road here, learning, taking assessments. I think that there's a sense of how can you actually translate what your thinking is into whatever assignment that you're providing, an essay, whatever, without giving up your autonomy. And I stole this idea from Josh, who introduced, so incredibly precocious. Being able to not give up that agency and use these things as tools. So that's one ethics side of, integrity. Yes, we can write so much more, but is it worth writing? If it is, then that's a wonderful boon to this whole thing. I think one other ethics side, and this falls a little bit on those of you that want to go into model development and conducting research. I know it's probably hard. You're like, oh, geez, I don't know if I even like math. I find that that is a really increasingly both social but also technical discipline, and trying to train these artificial intelligence models, essentially being, here's the stack of data to train upon. How are we pruning it to make sure that it's not all the vile, toxic information that might also cloud good information? And then also on top of that, what are some novel means of doing math? Reinforcement learning with AI feedback, atop human feedback. These are like different little methods. But regardless of those names, how are we advancing the state of the art in the sciences to actually evaluate and reduce bias, introduce more opportunities for folks that have been historically excluded, and more. So that's a social context, and I think a technical one.
So you've set me up perfectly for the question I'm going to ask Naomi, but I have to interject because my oldest daughter is here with me today, and she is a math major. And encouraging young women to stay in math is something I'm passionate about, and I was successful with her. And she works for Major League Baseball, which I told her was a big flex, wearing her MLB sweatshirt into a boys' Catholic school. But that's a great concept, right? That math is going to become both social and technical. It may also be a way that we continue to keep young women and girls on a math path. Glad I had 2 cups of coffee to say that. But this issue of bias, right? So many of our artificial, or at least some of our artificial intelligence platforms, so many of our systems in general have bias, right? As Sundar helped us to understand that, they're actually getting their information from human observation and input. So, Naomi, after you also introduce yourself without your BC High sweatshirt on for obvious reasons, how much of a bias should artificial intelligence have? Can it and should it remain neutral? Is there a free speech element here? And we recently saw, I think it was last week, although my weeks run together, that the president has started to introduce regulation. Will that help prevent bias?
Yeah, that's great questions. Naomi Caselli. I'm a faculty at Boston University, and I direct the AI and Education Initiative, where we're trying to sort of get ahead of the curve and not let AI happen to education, but to really be prospective and think in a forward way about it. In my own research, I look at, I'm in the Wheelock College of Education at BU, and my area of research is on deaf education and thinking about sign language and thinking about how we can make sign language technology more accessible. I think these questions about bias and are really, really interesting. I think if you think about what has come into kind of popular consciousness as we think about what AI means, how many of you, when you hear about AI, are thinking something like ChatGPT? Yeah. How many of you played around with it? I won't tell your teachers, I swear. Yeah, cool. ChatGPT or something similar, right? Okay, so when we think about it, I think historically in the field of, well, my background is in cognitive science, but I think in this work, the test of artificial intelligence was the Turing test, right? So the idea of the Turing test was, can we get a computer to deceive a person into believing that it is human? And that was really hard for a long period of time. And we thought about, well, how can we, well, we'll give it a rule. If you say hi, you should say hi. If you say, how are you, you should say, I'm well, how are you, right? So we taught all these rules, and we finally got into a place where how many of you could be convinced that if you didn't know text was written, would think that something that came out of ChatGPT was written by a person, right? We have surpassed the Turing test. There's no, you don't need to set up a little demo about this, right? It often looks very, very human. Yes, it has hallucinations, it has all kinds of errors, it has all sorts of other stuff going on with it that isn't very human-like, but there's a whole lot of text that comes out of it that looks really human-like. And I think what's interesting is that I think when we see something that looks like a human, we start to ascribe humanness to it. And so when you say things like free speech and rights and human rights, I think it's easy to forget that we are talking about a tool. We're talking about technology. And I think there's lots of interesting questions about where is AI going, and is it going to, have not just artificial intelligence, but is it actually going to, take on these human-like characteristics? We are not there yet. I don't think that's controversial to say. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I think we need to be really careful about ascribing rights to a tool. And when it comes to bias, I think there's a whole lot that we do want to be careful about. So the way that we teach these models is based on the internet, right? How many of you have had a not so hot experience on the internet or come across something a little disturbing or bizarre or upsetting or whatever, right? Yes. So, and it is not thinking, right? It's just replicating patterns that it's grabbing from the internet. And so I think we want to be really careful about saying, oh, it's doing that with some kind of intent, or it's, we should let it do its thing. And that's dangerous, not just because some text that it's going to reproduce is going to, have some hate speech in it, right? Which is no good. But also, I work on sign language. When we think about how powerful these tools are in our lives, how great is it to have Siri or Alexa or all of these other tools that are coming to us that work really well with spoken and written language? And what does that mean for the deaf community when these technologies don't work for sign language and you don't have those opportunities? Or when you're trying to diagnose cancer, and all of these other medical decisions are based on AI, and they work really well when they're based on sort of the majority of the data that they've seen, but they don't work so well for some people. Or when you're sending people to prison, or using facial recognition, or all these sorts of things, where we could be making decisions about people that are really consequential decisions, and we're not making the decisions necessarily. We're letting the AI make these recommendations that are biased, and we know that they're biased. We know that they don't work so well. In my own work in the sign language stuff, pose recognition, sort of how we recognize what the body is doing, works well with light-skinned people. It doesn't work so well with people of color. It doesn't work so well if your body works, or if you have, if your body is a little bit different than the average body. And so I think what Drew was saying is not going to go about these sort of ethical values about how we develop our own sense of thoughtfulness and critical thinking, and how do we take something that is produced by a tool and respond to it in a way that's thoughtful, and that's not perpetuating harm. I think that stuff is really important.
So my mom was a Catholic school teacher. Anybody who's ever worked for me knows I hate typos. I hate incorrect grammar. And so one of the things that has mildly excited me in a weird kind of way is this whole idea that one of the things that humans will still do in AI is like we're going to all become super editors, whether that's for coding or finding bias, right? So I'm like, oh, all of a sudden my day has come. Maybe every Catholic, right, school graduate, and I didn't go to Catholic school, but I might as well have. So what's a trick, right? Back to my takeaway, something usable. Is there something that the students and teachers, because we've seen some mistakes with this with professors, I'm sure none here, can use to recognize bias or incorrect information, or maybe even the use of AI if it wasn't supposed to be used? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, interesting. Those are great questions. I mean, I think it's close attention to detail. I think one of the things in psychology is you can take, you take something on its surface and it looks about right. And if it looks about right, then I'm not going to go into more depth because, this essay looks pretty good. It seems like the introduction, it all seems sort of solid, and then you don't really give it a second pass. And I think that turning off our own human bias in that way and saying, oh, just because superficially it looks good and the punctuation looks about right and things like that doesn't mean that what it's producing is accurate, right? Like you see these cases of, there was an early one of a lawyer who used ChatGPT to put together something for court, and it had references to cases that were not actual cases, right? So on the surface, the whole thing looks good, but like we don't really want to fact check every little detail. Well, we need to fact check every little detail. I think we need to think harder about what does it look like. What information am I being given? Am I being given information that is tailored particularly to me to try and convince me to do something that maybe I don't want to do? So I think there's a lot of things that we need to do to keep our eyes open, and I can't purport to see the future and think about how we should have our eyes open to all of these things. But I think it really is about paying attention.
All right. So when I'm done questioning everyone, we're also going to shift to audience questions. I'm not done questioning them yet. I have a few questions I want them to answer, but I'm going to do a little test here, but you guys have to work with me, and I can't lose control of the audience or I'll never be invited back, okay? All right. If during COVID, your school closed and you were sent home for more than 4 days of no school because of COVID, please stand up quietly. All right? You got to listen to me. All right? You're standing up quietly. If you were surprised during the time that you were required to be home during COVID, you missed something. It could have been anything about being at school. Please sit down. Could have been sports, could have been the lunch, could have been snacks. If you missed something about school, then you can sit down. All right. Everybody else can sit down now. So I counted 80% of students, probably most of whom everybody else can sit down. 80% of students probably, and some were shy because you guys in the front were like outliers and you were waiting to see if anybody else sat down. But I think so many students, including mine, right, were so surprised, and COVID has had such profound impacts on our students, but so have so many other things, right? We know social media, when the Surgeon General starts talking about these big disruptive things and the impact they have on mental health, which, listen, I'm ancient. You knew that before you started to get hints about how old I was with my biography and my gray hair. But back when I was in high school, nobody talked about mental health and the impacts of all these different tools. We know AI will have impacts on mental health because we've seen that sending kids home from school had impacts on mental health. Who would have thought, right? It wasn't like a snow day where you're like, woohoo, you know, lick your spoon, put your pajamas on backwards, whatever your ritual is, right? So we have to think about what the mental health impacts of artificial intelligence can be, but also, can it improve mental health? So, Drew, what are some of the artificial intelligence impacts or breakthroughs? Like, what are the most interesting things happening or that could happen around building relationships and increasing the role of technology that artificial intelligence might drive?
Especially with regards to mental health?
Yeah, in regards to mental health.
I find that there's a fair number of opportunities, maybe not right now, but I think in the somewhat near future, having language models be actually able to be tuned for a discussion on mental health topics. I think that is probably maybe not the toughest, but one of the toughest opportunities to actually have the right guardrails for that, though. We're starting to see some new medically tuned models. We have one, the Pathways Language Model PaLM, that we tuned for medicine, MedPalm. And so that's where essentially you have this big corpus of information in the internet or whatever. And then through a lot of methods of pruning it and tuning it with reinforcement learning and other learning methods, essentially you get it down to, you know, actual medical journals, not the case law or medical journals that were made up and seemed to be real, but the real ones. Could that be used in psychology or psychiatry focused? I think that there's promise there. And I know there's plenty of democratization of mental health resources that have happened prior to a lot of these models being available. So one thing that I am confident in saying is that whether it's because of AI or democratization of technology or just a more progressive view of society and our own relationship to ourselves and others, mental health is going to be and already is more addressable by nature of our communities, by nature of the technologies we have around. I hope that it's not just those with means that can afford, or with great insurance that can afford therapists, medicine if needed, and there's options within guardrails to have these models get to more people that want and need that type of discussion and help. I have a therapist. I also have great insurance, and I don't know that I know for a fact that's not the case for everybody. So I find that that is promising, although it might take a little while to make sure that, again, those hallucinations that you were discussing are not making their ways into extremely volatile and sensitive conversations. So I hope it's coming, and I think it is. It just needs to be made in concert with, yes, great mathematicians and computer scientists, and great clinicians, and great therapists, and great patients. So soon to come, I hope.
Two more quick questions, and then start thinking, because I am going to go to the audience for questions. Nobody ever wants to ask the first question, and then we can never get to the last question. So there's value in asking the first question. Naomi, schools are dealing, colleges and K through 12, with a lot of the fallout with mental health. Any thoughts on how schools should be thinking about utilizing AI in this mental health really crisis that we're facing?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think the way that I have been conceptualizing this is where are the places that we are really good as people at doing things, and where are the places that we're not so good? And let's use AI in the places where we're not so good, right? So one of the ways that we're not so good is necessarily noticing that people are struggling. I think sometimes we feel, I remember when I was sitting in your shoes, well, not exactly your shoes, because I was not here for good reason, but but when I was your age, I think I was really struggling with feeling alone and feeling like nobody saw me, and if I was having those struggles, nobody really reached out to ask. And I think maybe that's one of the places that schools could be thinking about using it, is trying to see, oh, hey, let's connect you with somebody. Let's, and maybe the AI is not becoming a replacement for what a therapist does really well necessarily, and I think in some cases, I think it could be really helpful to augment what humans are able to do. But maybe we can think about these other ways where we can start to offset some of the stuff that's hard for us. In the same way that, like, a calculator, right, does some of your math for you, but not all of your math. So what are the pieces that we can trust AI to do really well, and what are the pieces that we should how can we use it to make the human connections that we have with one another better? How can we use it to promote connection? I think in AI and education, one of the things that people talk about a lot is, oh, we'll just have tutors and we'll have AI teachers, or are we going to replace our teachers, right? No, I don't think so. I can't predict the future, but no, I don't think so. I think what we can do is make our teachers better. We can promote these connections to one another, because that's really one of the things that's so critical for mental health. And one of the things that COVID made so hard is the way that we were socially distanced, not just physically, but actually socially distanced from one another. So can we use it in ways that draw us together? And that's going to take some creativity to make happen, but I'm excited to see it.
I love that you also talked about creativity, because I think that's also one of the durable skills that students are going to need to have. Quickly changing gears a little bit. I know Drew is very careful about saying he doesn't speak for Google, but he works for Google. And I have no idea if you speak for Microsoft, but you work for Microsoft. And a lot of the larger companies have actually started partnerships with government as well as with individuals. I was at a conference where folks from Google talked about how engaged they are with K-12 and K-12 classrooms to make sure maybe not to replicate some of the mistakes we've made in earlier iterations of new technologies. So I'm wondering, Sundar, if you want to offer just some brief thoughts on how individuals, government, and companies, maybe not a specific company or maybe a specific company, up to you, should and are sort of collaborating to make sure that the guardrails we put around this exciting but also a little bit scary technology, how do we get it right? What are those collaborations?
Yeah, I was actually talking to Naomi earlier this morning. I want to extend her analogy in terms of what humans are good at and what the computers are good at to what organizations that provide technologies are good at and what organizations that use technologies are going to be good at. So when I think about institutions like high school, you are good at making the connections to your students. You're good at understanding what are the challenges the students face on a day-to-day basis. One of the things I loved about coming in today was your doorman greeting everybody, right? Like that's such a high personal energy interaction to kickstart your day. That is not going to be something that any artificial agent is going to replicate. So companies like the one that I work for, we make tools. But it's up to the institutions and up to individuals to leverage the tools. One of the projects that we did previously was we worked with the university education system in Tasmania to help identify students at risk of dropout. Now, so that's what the technology can do for them. Then it's up to the education system to figure out, like, how do you leverage this technology and what are the interventions you want to design. One of the things, I want to give another example of how individually one can use it. One of the cool things I like about using AI in my day-to-day work is not any of those fancy summarizations or inspirations. It gives me a recommendation to connect with someone in my organization that I have never met with. So like, hey, here is some person who we think you should connect with today. And that's, that's not a person I would have discovered myself. And now that it's in my face, literally, I feel obliged to reach out and make the connection. So it is actually helping me extend my network, helping me intentionally interact with people outside of my comfort zone. And that's something we all, especially when we retreat into our home environments and during pandemic, we all risk of getting further introverted and further insulated from the rest of the world.
All right, so this is the part where I'm going to go for questions. It's also where I get to act a little bit like Oprah, which the students also have no idea what I'm talking about. I also gain and lose weight in public, so I really could be Oprah. You also don't get that joke, but your teachers do. Does anybody have a question? Are they supposed to? Oh, good job. All right, white shirt, blue tie-ish. Stand up, ask a question, then I'm going to repeat it because we have like thousands of people. I don't want to make you nervous in the watching this on streaming video. Tell me your name.
My name is Damian Paczynski. I'm in Romero House, and I have a question. Have any of you guys developed on games like Fortnite and stuff?
So Damien's question is, have any of you guys, I'm assuming using AI or not, developed any cool games like Fortnite and stuff? I had to make sure I asked the question exactly like Damien, whose name I can't pronounce, would do it. These are the things. I'll come to the red tie right after we ask that, then I'll come back to you. Anybody? I knew it was going to be Sundar.
I cannot claim to have contributed to any cool games, but we are helping some of these games become much more accessible, much more scalable. So yeah, I think if we just expanded our portfolio of games, I'm not even sure what are the new games that we support, but gaming is one of the areas where AI is going to have a big role to play.
So, cool. All right, red tie. I am so proud of you guys. Tell me your name and then your question loud enough that an old person like me can repeat it.
So, as far as I can see in history, we have seen jobs be converted and destroyed, like the Mason easily destroyed when we invented the gun. It's crazy. But as far as I can see, AI is not generating jobs. It's more or less destroying them faster than we can create them. Is there a point in time where AI is just going to take over all jobs?
And what was your name?
Liam Hawker.
Okay, Liam?
Liam Hawker.
All right, Liam wants to know, is AI going to eat all of our jobs? Or are all of us going to be unemployed, except for those of us who are really good moderators?
I can jump in. I think the optimistic view is always, no, it's always augmentative, it will add. But I think that there's a lot of folks that would resonate with that rosy view, but are also very concerned. I find that right now, perhaps due to my privilege, I haven't seen a lot of jobs around me be reduced, but again, privilege in that I'm working in this field. So I find that there's so many opportunities throughout history, and as an astute student, you would see things converting. I think that humans' desire for status, for meaning, we kind of debate if we want to work more or less, but I think that there will always be a need to express oneself and relate to a community and relate to progress. The form that that takes will obviously evolve. I think this is one of the biggest catalysts for a change. And I think and I do hope that we encourage each other to develop new skill sets and not really think it's ever too late to understand what a computer does. Never too late to start evolving, but not shedding old habits entirely or shedding old passions, but seeing what these things can do as far as tools. So perhaps that's a bit rosy, but I do believe in the human condition, and I think that will be the most enduring spirit that pushes people to find means to spend their time and do it for the sake of each other.
So I'm going to go in the front here, and then I'm going to go all the way to the back row. But if you can start walking up, if that's okay with your teacher, so that I can hear you when I get to you. See that? Both of the, yep. All right, Gray. What's your name?
Brady Johnson. Brady. As we see more and more jobs taken over or controlled by AI, do you see the education system being either destroyed or like not in the near future, but in the far future? Do you see the education system eventually crumbling because there is no point, either AI is taking over school or there are no jobs for school to teach?
So the question is a similar question, right? Like, as AI changes the economy, what's the impact on education? Is there no education? Are there no schools because you're not teaching skills that need to be taught? Great question, Brady. I'm going to let Naomi ask that, and then I let those guys, and then I'm going to go to you. But this is perfect. Everybody get in line if you have a question. We're going to start to do quicker questions, and we're never going to get to all of them.
All right, good. Okay, so, ooh, we are lots of movement.
We're never going to stop getting in line. We're never going to get to all of them.
All right. Okay, so I think the answer to the question is this. So are jobs going to be replaced? Yes, right? There are some jobs and some work that we are doing now that we don't need to do, in the future, when there are computers that can do it for us faster and well. Do I think that there will be no jobs? Absolutely not. I think there's still going to be ways that humans are learning to use these tools to make these tools work really well for us. There's going to continue to be a human condition that we are trying to work around, that we're trying to improve. We're trying to improve the world, and AI is not going to do that for us. So there are always going to be ways for us to contribute. There are always, who am I? I can't predict the future. I'm not all-knowing, but I feel pretty confident that there's not a place where we're going to stop wanting to innovate, where we're going to stop wanting to contribute, where we're going to stop wanting to make this world a better place. When it comes to education, I think it's a really, really interesting question. I don't think the answer is we don't need education, right? I think the answer is we need to think about what are we learning for, and what are we learning to try and do, and which skills don't we need anymore because AI can do it, and which skills do we need extra of, right? So one of the examples, I don't know how many of you, maybe you've seen the, there's some nice, I don't know, deep fakes of, do you know what a deep fake is? Like a video where you can make Barack Obama look like he's saying something that he didn't say, right? And I think as we think about those kinds of information proliferating, like videos that look like they're videos, but nobody actually said that, or, information out in the world that was generated by ChatGPT that's trying to get you to vote in a certain way, or act in a certain way, or buy a certain thing, or all of these sorts of things. I think what we need education to be doing is to be teaching us how to deal with that information, how to use that information, this is such an exciting time, I think, particularly right now when your teachers are learning alongside you. How do we play around with this and make these tools work really well for us? Those are going to be the things that education is going to continue to do, and where we're going to need to sort of take a moment and say, hey, do we, in the same way that we did with the calculator, in the same way that we did when writing became a thing, in the same way when the printing press came around, every new technology, every new set of tools, we've asked this same set of questions to ourselves and asked, do we still need jobs? Oh yeah, okay, we do. Okay, do we still need to learn? Oh yeah, okay, we do. But what do we need to learn, and how do we need to learn it, and what do we need to be focusing on, and what of our current habits that we have are now going to become obsolete? I think those are really, really great questions, but I don't think the answer is black and white. We don't need it, we do need it. I think we got to find the gray, right? Find that middle ground to say, what do we need, and what don't we need? And I think you have an awesome opportunity to be creative and to be forward-thinking and to be learning and pushing the answers to those questions.
If you were still in line, and think of a quick way to ask your question.
My question is, for ChatGPT, is there any restrictions would you like? What would you think of for restrictions for ChatGPT?
How would you restrict ChatGPT? Good way to keep a short question.
I think that regardless of the application, whether it's ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, whatever, there's means of curating really terrible responses and hallucinations, whether it's just plain infactual or if it's actually promoting hate or another type of discrimination. There's both social and technical ways to do that. One of the ways that's really coming in this last year, if you want to get technical on it, is the notion of reinforcement learning with AI feedback coded with a constitution. The notion that we have a model, kind of a teacher model, professor, checking the student model all the time and seeing, does this answer comport with the true ethos of what we want to provide? That is both a social and a technical means of doing that. But to answer your question more succinctly, we should respect a pluralism of values around the world, but then also know a few things about not promoting harm, not surveilling people, not instilling hate in folks' hearts. So I think that those are the bare minimum. I hope for more.
Quick question.
Overall, with your takeaway from everything that we said, the good and the positive, what is your overall takeaway? Is ChatGPT and things like that good for students?
Is AI and ChatGPT good or bad for students? Going to make you say good or bad? Overall, on balance.
A good, nuanced good.
All right, I said good or bad.
I'm sideways, sorry.
Good.
Good question. We're going to get... I already asked him to do a speed round. I didn't plant you. What's your favorite thing that AI can do or your favorite app?
Well, you mentioned deepfakes, and then you mentioned Obama. I've seen, this is stupid, but I've seen Obama as Ice Spice. That was pretty hilarious. Is that advancing humanity? Probably not. But it is kind of funny where it's like, okay, we really dream up these like horrible things that it could do. And yes, I don't want to underestimate the horrible things, and I research threats. But it is awesome to see when things are just like utterly superfluous and still hilarious. So I think
We all need fun.
that's mine.
All right, Naomi, beat that.
I can't beat that. I don't know. I mean, I think some of the really cool ones are. I was talking about this morning. There's some where you can take a video. I took a video of myself talking, and I converted it so that I'm speaking Turkish and then Mandarin, and it's got my like mouth movements right. It's using my voice. I think that's so cool to think about how we can connect across languages and language barriers that currently exist.
That is a cool one. Sundar?
I used to go with Snapchat filters, but I have to upgrade my example.
Great question. Really quick question, because I'm going to be like pulled off the stage.
I heard one of you worked at Google. Did you like work on development for Bard, or have you heard anything about it? Was like the project like easier or harder than we think?
Oh, Bard, you're not representing Google, but
Yeah.
do you have an opinion about Bard? Or I don't even know what Bard is. I thought it was actually a Shakespeare reference.
Tragic, because it's our ChatGPT. I didn't work on the development of the underlying models, but generally I do work on applying our models, and I'm kind of on our like applied product team. How hard is it? I think the really tough thing is getting over. There's no like tests anymore. There's so many different metrics, benchmarks that we can test against, but the real thing is, do people like it? Is it useful? And is it safe? I think those are ever evolving, and that's harder than expected. Or I don't know if it's harder or easier to answer your question. It's a really good question. But one thing that I think that is always relevant, and I'll close with this, is that we have to keep iterating, whether it's any of these companies' products, iterating with safety teams, trust teams, iterating in the open as well as another philosophy, finding means to see if you like it and then coming back to it again and then trying to iteratively improve. I don't believe in these, suddenly we're going to have something uncontrollable if we keep progressing along the way with really responsible principles and feedback. So thanks.
And I was kidding because I use Google all the time. So I was just trying to be funny. Thank you all so much. So now we have something very exciting. So I am going to bring Grace Cotter Reagan back to the stage and sit down.
How about a big round of applause for our guests? Thank you, gentlemen, for staying focused. I want to thank you, Governor Swift, Dr. Srinivasan, Mr. Calcano, and Ms. Casali. What an inspiring conversation. We've learned a lot here today. Thank you. We're so grateful to have you join our school community and share your insights and expertise with us. I thought it was fascinating. We're honored to convene the secondary schools as we collectively work to further embrace the promise of AI. Together as educators, we continue to thoughtfully embrace opportunities to use this transformative technology to empower our students and educators to both advance our teaching and learning and equip our students for the future. So today we want to celebrate some of our own students with the AI in Education and Art and Writing contest. And now to share some exciting news for our BC High students. Over the past couple of months, dozens of teams have participated in our AI in Education, Art and Writing contest. You may have seen these incredible pieces in the Hunter Fahey Commons as you came in today. They've explored AI tools, reflected on the intersection of AI and education, and articulated their vision for the future of education through AI-generated art and writing. I'm proud to announce our top middle school teams, and I'd like to ask the boys to stand when their name is called. We'd like to congratulate the third place team, Ishahan Naila Patle, class of 29. Please stand. Peter McMahon, class of 28. Second place team. First place team, Zion Mehdi, class of 29, and Rian Brown, class of 29. Please stay standing, boys. And our high school finalists, congratulations to the third place team of Adam Quraishi, 26 of King House. The second place team, Delroy Kofi, class of 26 of Judge House. And the first place team, Dante Minakapili, of 25 of Romero House. Congratulations, gentlemen. And the AI Summit continues with special thanks to our panelists and our guest speakers. We want to thank Kyle Laro09 and Matt Nightingale from Amazon Web Services, Arjun Murthy from RightPage. And in closing, I'd like to thank especially the students and educators who have joined us today. In person, we have Boston Trinity Academy, Cathedral High School, Catholic Memorial, Cristo Rey Boston, Fontbonne Academy, my alma mater, Notre Dame Academy Hingham, St. John's Prep, Ursuline Academy, and Xaverian. And joining us from around the globe, we have, quiet boys, Benedictine Military School in Savannah, Georgia, Cristo Rey Atlanta in Atlanta, Georgia, Jesuit Portland in Portland, Oregon, Lincoln School in Costa Rica, McQuaid Jesuit in Rochester, New York, Felix Academy in Andover, Mass, Regis Jesuit in Aurora, Colorado, Strake Jesuit in Houston, Texas, and Wellesley High School in Wellesley, Mass. Thank you for being with us. And as a school, we always thank our internal friends who do so much for us. We want to thank Mr. Keith and the facilities team, Chris Harrigan, Joe Giblin, and the IT team, Mr. Lewis, Ms. McDonald, and the academic team, Joe McNamara and Julia Canzano from the Shield Center for Innovation who put this together. Big round of applause for Mr. Mack and Julia. We also want to thank the Student Arts Council under the leadership of Mr. McAllister, Dean Romano, class of 26, Kaylee Mannion, and the Media Club, Your work in putting this event is an example of your commitment to this important topic. And most importantly, I want to thank Mr. Shields, who has made the Innovation Center possible, and the Innovation Council, who lead us with Mr. McNamara, and our friends at Virtual. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Mr. Poole will be coming right up to dismiss you, but we're delighted, and thank you so much for being with us.